Hi everyone, it's Carolyn from Fresh and Foraged, and today I'm going to teach you how to take this jar of dried resinous polypore mushroom slices and turn it into this rosemary infused Ischnoderma syrup, which we will then use to make this lovely Ischnoderma Spritz. It's sweet, it's sour, it's earthy from the herbs and from the mushroom, and it's got like a little bit of like a woodsy note as well. Join me as we go on this culinary adventure. So I had the wonderful opportunity to help run the coffee house for the NAMA 2025 foray right here in southern Vermont. So I developed and made 4 mushroom-based syrups that folks could use to basically make their own sodas. So we had these sweetened syrups. Each one had a different mushroom in them. Each had a different flavor. And then folks could just like pour some ice and bubbly water in them and take a lovely like homemade mushroom soda on the road as they kind of wandered off to their various classes and forays. So today I'm going to share with you how I made one of my favorites. This is the Ischnoderma Spritz. So Ischnoderma, also known as Resinous Polypore, steak of the woods, that weird drippy mushroom, why does it have those amber droplets on it, and many other wonderful and strange names. So the one I'm using today and the one that I typically work with is Ischnoderma resinosum, the resinous polypore. There is some debate in the mycology community, but some folks say there is another separate species, Ischnoderma benzoin, which grows exclusively on conifers, whereas Ischnoderma resinosum grows exclusively on hardwoods. But we'll see, time will tell as kind of more DNA testing is done and folks work a little more on those genetics to give us the final answer. So this is one of my favorite mushrooms. It's really common where I live here in Vermont. There's not many sightings in Canada or Mexico, but mostly it's sort of in like the eastern half of the United States. So I typically see this mushroom fruiting heavily in the fall on down hardwood logs, but I've also seen smaller fruitings in the spring as well. And basically where the resinous polypore gets its name from is it's very common to see this mushroom with these beautiful little amber colored resinous dots dripping down from the bottom of the mushroom. So in the mycology world, we might call this guttation or exudate. Exudate meaning just something that the mushroom is exuding. But more informally, you might think of it as mushroom sweat. And this happens most commonly on the young specimens. If you're wandering through the woods and you see sort of this like remarkably soft polypore. It's remarkably soft for a polypore. It sort of has like a white band around the outside, but sort of these like brown bands, concentric bands going out on the cap, and then the growing edge is tender and white. And it's often really overlooked. Folks are out there, if they're gonna go for a mushroom, they're gonna like maybe try for morels, so we don't get too many here, but definitely go for like your chicken of the woods, your hen of the woods. But here I am to kind of propose that you go for the steak of the woods. So now, why do some folks call it steak of the woods? That's because it has this sort of like interesting flavor. Some folks really say that the flavor, not the texture, is kind of uncannily similar to tri-tip steak. I don't eat a lot of steak, so I can neither confirm nor deny, but I will say it does have sort of a like gamey, like meaty flavor, which actually makes it one of my favorite mushrooms to work with if I'm creating a mushroom-based broth. It could pass as a vegan beef broth, so I really like to use it for that. But my big challenge for NAMA was to kind of turn this into, it's really easy to work with the resinous polypore in savory applications, but I wanted to see how I could kind of bring that into the sweet realm. So the first thing I did was I like made some broth, and I tasted it, and I was like, this really does like taste gamey, sort of like a wild meat almost. And so of course my mom was like, well, what's a really common flavor combination with meat. And of course, rosemary popped into my head. And I always love pairing a little bit of thyme with mushrooms. I think it goes really well with those sort of like woodsy notes that mushrooms have. So a lot of times I'll kind of put some thyme in my concoction. So right off the bat, I was like, okay, we have this like meaty mushroom. We're trying to take it from savory to sweet. And let's work with rosemary and thyme. And then, of course, I'm a very visual person. So I was like, this is going to be one messy little muddy brown syrup unless we do something to kind of perk it up. And of course, my mind turned immediately to my dear friend hibiscus, which makes a lovely deep red tea. And I was thinking, it could kind of take that muddy brown and just like really perk it up and make it into a feast for the eyes. And so hibiscus has this wonderful sort of like tart flavor, and the flavor wheels in my brain were thinking, I was like, okay, rosemary, thyme, tart. Okay, lemon often is paired, like lemon and rosemary is kind of like a classic combo. I like to use it a lot on potatoes. So I was like, I think we're going to take the little bit of sourness that's naturally present in this hibiscus and just sort of like amplify it, turn up the dial a little bit. So that way, when I add the sugar to the syrup, it's sweet, it's sour, it's earthy, from the herbs and from the mushroom. And it's got like a little bit of like a woodsy note as well. So that's sort of how I arrived at this recipe. I then like tested it a bunch of times. I had friends over and we had a big mushroom soda tasting. And here I am today to recreate it with you. I'm going to share a like pretty simplified version today. But what I did for Nama and what I typically do if I have the time is I will simmer the mushrooms for like hours. And you can just like, if they're running low on water, you can just add more water, but basically just like simmer the heck out of them. And then I take that broth and I strain it and then I condense it and I reduce it down so it's like super potent broth. So it's like a lot of mushroomy flavor because basically the notes in this lovely syrup, we're going to use a lot of rosemary today. So rosemary is going to be the primary flavor. So if you don't like rosemary, this is not the syrup for you. But if you do, it's your lucky day. And that was one of the main pieces of feedback I got from folks at Nama in Vermont, which is the folks who love the herbs absolutely adored this syrup because it's got a very strong herbal flavor. So we're going to start off by making a concentrated broth out of our Ischnoderma resinosum, the Resinous Polypore. We're going to take 4 cups of water, bring that to a boil. Then we're going to add in 50 grams of dried Resinous Polypore. So this is about 2 cups. I like to call this a mushroom broth, but more formally it's known as a decoction because we're kind of simmering this material for a while. But basically we're doing a water extraction. So we're going to cover that so that not too much of the water evaporates. And then after 45 minutes, we're going to strain that. And one step that I really like to do is I have this like pretty cool, it's just like a potato ricer, but it's like the best for extracting liquids from, I don't know, anything you've infused, from mushroom broths, from tinctures. So I put those mushrooms right into the potato ricer and give them a big old squeeze, and that basically extracts about an additional half cup of broth from these mushrooms. So I love to do that, totally optional step. Also, just a side note that the amount of broth that this produces is more than you'll need for this recipe. But you can also just use it for regular broth purposes, make a nice little soup out of it. So while those mushrooms are simmering, we're gonna get our herbs steeping. First off, I like to just strip the leaves off the rosemary and just give them like, it's not even that much of a chop. You're really just kind of bruising the rosemary leaves just to kind of help extract a little more of their flavor. And we're going to put those rosemary leaves into a quart mason jar along with a teaspoon and a half of fresh thyme, a 1/3 cup of dried hibiscus, that's 10 grams for the folks at home, and also 1.5 cups or 300 grams of sugar. And then we're going to pour 2.5 cups of almost boiling water over this. So now it's important that it's not fully boiling, because I'm always thinking about like the medicinal benefits of herbs, and at least for the hibiscus, it's really high in vitamin C, which gets destroyed when it contacts boiling water. So we're going to use like slightly less than boiling water. And so 2.5 cups of not quite boiling water, and then we're going to put that all in there, give it a stir, and I like to put a lid on it just to keep those volatile aromatic compounds in the jar. And so we're going to let that steep for about 45 minutes as well. So when the time is up, just strain that out. And then add in your half cup of super concentrated mushroom broth and the lemon juice. So, in addition to having this wonderful mushroom-infused drink, we're going to take it to the next level by using these wonderful treats from Wade at Fermented Forest. So, right here we have a Koji Pineberry Chocolate Cordyceps Hot Honey. We're going to use this to create basically a honey syrup. If you're familiar with simple syrup, it's the exact same thing. The honey syrup, you just do 1 part honey to 1 part water, mix it up, and then we're going to use that and put that on the rim of the glass. And then we're going to take this Cordyceps MSG. So this is not MSG in the traditional sense, but my understanding is this is sort of a mixture of glutamate-containing ingredients to basically just like give you a little bit of an umami bomb. So this is a seasoned salt, and we're going to mix it maybe about like 1 teaspoon of the salt with like maybe like 3 or 4 tablespoons, so about 1/4 cup of sugar to make sort of a sweet and salty rim. We're going to take the glass and we're going to dip it in the chocolate hot honey mixture, and then we're going to give it a dunk right in this Cordyceps MSG plus sugar rim and kind of whirl them around a little bit. And usually here I would use ice, but today I did not have ice in my freezer. I had frozen cranberries, so we're using cranberries for additional festivities. Cranberries, they're not just for Thanksgiving or Christmas. You can use them any time of the year. So basically we're using our little cranberry cubes and pouring in the syrup, topping off with cold bubbly water. We're gonna have this lovely, honestly just a feast for the senses. You're getting a nice hit of mushroom broth. It's a feast for the eyes, a feast for the taste buds. We've got sweet, we've got sour, we've got Cordyceps MSG. We have 2 forms of Cordyceps in here. So I hope you'll give this a try at home. Let me know if you make this recipe, what you think of it, any questions you have right below in the comments, and enjoy! Thanks all. Bye.